Spring football is just about 10 days away. Let's break down the Buckeyes on offense with Pat Murphy from Bucknuts. You can catch him right there on 247 Sports. Pat, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. And it's not real football, but it's at least something to talk about. And, of course, it's vital to the development of the players getting ready for 2020. I tend to get excited for these spring games, and then I remember once I see about 4 or 5 plays of the first quarter that they are spring games and they're glorified practice sessions. But nonetheless, an important time for Ohio State football, trying to repeat as Big Ten champions and get back to the college football playoff. So, Pat, let's start at quarterback. This could be a lengthy video, or it could be rather short and tight with Justin Fields, of course, having no competition for the starting job, rightfully so, coming off a 41 touchdown season and 3 interceptions. So let's start with him in regards to it's certainly he can get better. There's a development process there as a passer, as a reader of defenses when he drops back to pass for more traditional sets, passing game downfield. But in regards to Justin Fields, it's more about health. We saw a compromised Justin Fields, who was still a very good player down the stretch and against Clemson, but not the type of dynamic player that and the skill set that he brings on a regular basis.
Absolutely. I think those are things we're certainly going to look at this spring. The progression of him as a college quarterback last year, despite coming to Georgia as a 5-star recruit and ending up at Ohio State, where he was the highest recruited player to ever land with the Buckeyes. You know, he still had to learn how to be a starting quarterback, learn the offense, those type of things. And it went pretty smoothly, all things considered. A Heisman Trophy finalist, as you mentioned, the numbers were fantastic, but you know, he also was sacked a number of times when he probably could have either gotten rid of the ball quicker, made better decisions in terms of getting out of the pocket, things like that. So you'd like to see those type of things improve from Justin Fields as he progresses into year 2 as a starter. But the health is also a thing. He was hurt at the end of that Penn State game, the second to last regular season game. Came out and played in the Michigan game with a knee brace on, ended up hurting the knee again in that second half, had to leave the game for 4 or 5 plays, comes back in, which I think most Buckeye fans were just amazed to see him back on the field at that point, immediately throws a touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson. So it looked like everything was okay, but you could see in the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin and then in the college football playoff semifinal against Clemson, he just wasn't himself. That knee was certainly not 100%. He, wasn't running to his full capabilities. And not that he ran a ton last year, because Ohio State didn't have a ton of depth at the quarterback position and didn't want to risk him getting hurt, which he ultimately did a little bit. But, when he ran, you could see the difference. And in games against teams like, the Penn States, the Michigans, the Wisconsins, and especially a Clemson in a playoff game where the talent is more equal, you need Justin Fields to be at his best. So you certainly want to see this spring that he's all healed up from the knee issue that he had and, ready to go for 2020. How much we'll see of Justin Fields in terms of his mobility and whatnot in spring practice and in the spring game, I don't know. But you just want to make sure he looks comfortable out there and that there hasn't been any sort of setbacks or, he's healed up just the way you would expect.
Yeah, once J.K. Dobbins was compromised as well, Justin Fields came into the game that way. It was a very much a different offensive approach in the second half, in which he became a drop back passer for the most part. Again, as you mentioned, the statistics are off the board, off the charts, 67%, 41 touchdowns, 3 picks, 2 of those against Clemson, 3,200 yards, and he ran for 400 plus and 10 touchdowns. Chris Chuganoff was a guy that got into several games during mop-up duty, threw 6 touchdowns, 43 attempts. He won't be back. Gunnar Hoke is the guy that couldn't win the Kentucky job, so not necessarily the type of number 2 quarterback we would expect at Ohio State. People are excited down the road about Jack Miller and C.J. Stroud. Your thoughts about those guys as they come into the mix?
Yeah, Gunnar Hoke was a guy they brought in last year. He was available in the transfer portal, as you mentioned, from Kentucky. He's a kid who grew up an Ohio State fan, grew up in Columbus. His dad played at Ohio State. So it was a natural fit in that sense. Where maybe it didn't quite fit was the skill level. And I think Ohio State found that to some degree last year. And, nothing against Gunnar Hoke, a talented player in his own right, but just not quite at the level of Ohio State quarterbacks, especially recently. He was certainly more of a depth guy last year, was behind Chris Chuganoff, who was another transfer, came from West Virginia to help add depth the year prior. So as of right now, he's probably, by default, the number 2 quarterback. But you mentioned the 2 freshmen, Jack Miller from Arizona, CJ Stroud from California, 2 guys Ohio State went across the country to get. Jack Miller's a guy they were in on pretty early, offered him, shortly after Ryan Day first saw him play. Really, really liked what they saw. He's a player who's battled injuries a decent amount throughout his high school career. Senior year, missed time with injuries. Saw his rankings kind of drop a little steadily as his high school career went on, but still a quarterback that Ohio State very much likes. They stuck with him throughout the process. And then, as time progressed, it became obvious that they needed more depth at the quarterback position when, Dwayne Haskins left the NFL early, and then Tate Martell elected to transfer when Justin Fields came in, and Matthew Baldwin, who had just finished a freshman year recovering from an ACL injury, going into his redshirt freshman year, decides to transfer back to Texas, to his home state of Texas. So now you're pretty thin. You need another quarterback in the 2020 class. And they went out and found CJ Stroud from outside of Los Angeles. It's a kid who was the opposite of Jack Miller, really. He was a late bloomer, kind of rose out of nowhere to be one of the top pro-style quarterbacks in the 2020 class. And, really surprised a lot of people. Had a lot of late offers. When we talked to him on National Signing Day, he talked about, USC getting in there late and some other of the more regional schools. But Ohio State had done a good job already, kind of done their work with him and really like what they've got from him. So spring's going to be interesting because this will be the first time we see that quarterback battle between the 2 freshmen for what right now, and you can throw Gunnar Hoke in there, what right now will be for the backup job to Justin Fields, but could be, the head start on whoever becomes the starter once Justin Fields leaves, which could be after next season. If he has another year like he did in 2019, maybe he stays for a senior year, though I doubt it. So there's a lot of intrigue in that backup quarterback battle because you know what Fields has got, but you want somebody that's able to step in. Which freshman is more ready? I think it'll probably be one of the freshmen as the backup. And then which one is ahead in terms of the starting quarterback battle down the road. And while we're on the topic, Ohio State has Kyle McCord coming in, a 2021 quarterback who just recently in the new 247 sports ranking updates got bumped up to a 5-star. So this spring could be big for the 2 freshmen, in terms of setting themselves up for the future, not only in a battle with their classmate, but with what's coming down the pipeline in Kyle. And, if you can get enough of a head start that a 5-star kid coming in isn't going to jump you, that could certainly be helpful.
Pat is in the process of previewing all of Ohio State's positions heading into spring camp, so please check out his quarterbacks preview. Again, Stroud was ranked as a 4-star, as the 2nd-rated pro-style quarterback, and Jack Miller as the 13th ranked player at his position. So that would tell us that Stroud's more highly thought of, or does there seem to be much of a difference in skill set?
I think he is, based on what he was able to accomplish as a senior. Had a great senior season out in LA, and that's really what grabbed the national attention. Jack Miller, like I mentioned, was hurt. Kind of just sort of seemed to slip through the cracks a little bit in terms of that recognition. But Ohio State really likes both of them. I think if you ask Ryan Day in his most honest moment, I don't think he knows which one will be the guy come the time for them to step in. I think that they both provide a little bit different skill sets. Both can be mobile, despite the fact that they're listed as pro-style quarterbacks. I think it's going to just be which player is able to adapt to the college game quickest, who can pick up the offense the quickest. And even then, this competition is going to be ongoing. I don't think they're going to name an incumbent starter anytime soon. So, I think that this will be just the start this spring between these two. And then next year, there will be an even bigger battle for who becomes the starter, assuming Justin Fields decides to leave early for the NFL draft. But Ohio State went from having Justin Fields and really no one else behind him last year and managed to, get back to the playoff, to now having Justin Fields, a more experienced backup, maybe not quite as talented in Gunnar Hoke, and then two freshmen who they believe are really talented. They really like. What they're lacking at this point is experience, which ideally you try and get them early in the season next year and kind of mop up duty and whatnot.
Or then again, maybe we're selling Gunnar Hoke short. 6 projects to what, an all-time great status if we project that out to 300 pass attempts.
That is pretty good. I can't say much about the level of competition that those 6 pass attempts came against, but 6 for 6 is 6 for 6, and I think he would certainly defend those numbers.
For 104 yards, so he's stretching the field as well.
Yeah.
Pat Murphy on the line from Bucknuts. Please join him there covering Ohio State football.